Hello fellow hunters, welcome to this week's weapon guide. Oh boy, this one was special. Today's guide is about the 1865 Carbine, a weapon that I have a love-hate relationship with. On one side, playing it can be pretty fun because it's something different to other weapons of the medium ammo category, mostly due to its high damage and its unique design. What I wasn't prepared for though is the pain that comes with playing some of its variants, or basically both its variants honestly, but we'll get into that later. The 1865 is pretty cheap, it's pretty easy to get, and oh boy, can it blow at times. Let's roll the clips.
Повыше. Выстрел!
Anyway, now getting to the guide. The 1865 Carbine is a $70 easy to access medium ammo firearm that does 145 damage up to 30 meters. Let that sink in. You do 4 less damage than the Sparks up to 30 meters with the base variant of the Carbine. You get an 8-round magazine with a very slow cocking time, and your muzzle velocity is relatively weak at only 340 meters per second. Yeah, it's much easier to just use FedEx to ship your bullets, but we'll get to that later. Another issue is the fact that this thing has the repeating mechanism of loading a freaking artillery gun. It takes ages to frickin' reload between bullets, making it not the easiest to utilize, and especially if things get hairy in close range, you should carry an appropriate sidearm with you to whip out, or potentially use something like a Derringer. Okay, so let's look at it. So the high damage makes it so that body tapping anybody within considerable range, even above 30 meters, will let them know that you mean business. I mean, like literally, just when 90% of your HP vanishes, you kind of don't want to get hit again. Especially with the plethora of explosive proximity weapons and other similar stuff that can just really ruin your day. The most important part in that regard is to simply pay attention to how you play it. Focus on body shots, don't try to go for headshots. It just simply makes life way easier for you and should help with that greatly. So it's very important that just like with, for example, the Maynard, you play very deliberately. Try to aim your shots. Sending them down range does nothing for you. Your slow rechambering means that the enemy may get a chance to push you, may get a chance to flinch your shot by shooting you with their weapon. A lot of things can go wrong with the Carbine. That's why I suggest you pick it carefully. That same goes for the ammo types. The ammo types should be picked with care because of the muzzle velocity that, for example, gets reduced by FMJ and subsonic. But let's get to that. The 1865 gets 2 custom ammo types. The first one being full metal jacket and the other being subsonic ammo. The issue with subsonic ammo is that it's only really useful on silencers, so you can't really bother with much more than that. But let's talk about the normal FMJ ammo first. So FMJ on the normal Carbine reduces your already less than ideal velocity all the way down to 272 meters. That is very slow, and I mean very, very slow. Using FMJ in that regard is an absolute death sentence. I usually do not play FMJ on the normal Carbine because the damage is so high that you will still do a significant amount of damage beyond 30 meters. I'd say till about like 40 or 50 meters, which is good. If you say you have the confidence in your shot, you can also use FMJ. But just remember, if you decide to do so, you literally take the very thing away from you that gives you range, muzzle velocity. Another issue is that the 1865, because of how hard it is to use, may lead to you potatoing a lot of your shots. So having easy ammo access by using default ammo is also a benefit. Let's talk about subsonic ammo. Don't use it. Do not use it outside the freaking silencer variant. I pray to God. The problem is you reduce your muzzle velocity even more than FMJ, because instead of only having 272 meters per second on FMJ, subsonic on the base gun has the issue of having only 242 meters, which is even slower, meaning that hitting shots is even harder. Range becomes pretty much impossible. Plus, subsonic gives you no real advantage except giving you extra ammo, which I would want my 100 meters of muzzle velocity for instead. So please do not use subsonic on this gun unless you're playing a silencer, if you really want to. And we'll get to that in a second, because Crytek, in their infinite wisdom, have also pulled some shenanigans there. Let's move on to the first variant, although before I should probably talk about one thing. You will need one perk for the 1865 carbine. That perk is Iron Eye, just like with any repeating rifle. It allows you to increase the fire rate while staying in sights and makes the recycling animation or the operation of the lever much more smooth, which allows for better follow-up shots and tracking your target. Let's talk about the aperture. The aperture has got to be the most pointless variant of a gun inside Hunt Showdown. The aperture is designed to provide you ranged magnification. The only issue is aperture sights are kind of useless for that. So what you effectively get is a low velocity carbine that doesn't have range beyond, let's say, 60 meters, fires very slowly, and has low muzzle velocity. To achieve extra range, you'd have to give up even more muzzle velocity, while the aperture only gives you a very narrow field of view. I decided to actually go through the pain of trying to use the aperture and actually managed to get a kill with it, but goddamn, do not use the aperture unless you're a masochist or you want the luxury of having it for that one situation where the enemy is slightly poking his head between two little planks that you just need the aperture for. Because otherwise you're going to play mostly with the sight folded down, because the problem is the aperture's FOV is so narrow that you can't even lead shots sight on. You can forget hitting anything at range anyway, like you will see or have seen with the kill. It's just simply very, very situational, and I wouldn't really pay extra just for a sight that I use maybe like 1 in 10 engagements. Plus, you know, there's an alternative to needing an aperture. Just reposition, push up, get close. That's the thing. And range is not good for the carbine anyway, since you want to capitalize on your damage, because at range your low muzzle velocity just causes the enemy to easily dodge your shots, and the drop in damage will make sure that you're not really able to engage them much, because your damage will be just like any other medium ammo, right? Which is pretty bad because you fire slower than them, meaning that you could hit an enemy, you could miss because of your muzzle velocity, you could miss again, then you hit him again, but you don't kill him because he healed in the meantime using a regeneration shot. The aperture is really, really not worth its weight nor its price. I get why they tried to introduce it because of the punchiness of the carbine, but a weapon with such a low muzzle velocity, such horrendous drop at range as well, in combination with the narrow FOV of the sight. I mean, if it was at least something like a Deadeye, as ironic as it sounds, I would probably go with it, but it's not. And so I wouldn't really recommend it because you lack the FOV of a Deadeye scope while having insane magnification with just, you basically become blind and tunnel visions as soon as you look through that sight. Do not use it. Next on the list is a good old friend, the silencer. The silencer, just like the aperture, is pretty pointless, and I'll talk about why in a second. The issue I have with the silencer is quite simple. Silencers before patch 2.3 did the same amount of damage as normal rifles, except they had 10 meters less damage drop off than other rifles and a lower drop range due to the decreased velocity that came with it as well. Problem is that Crytek changed that. So the carbine goes from its absolutely earth-shattering 145 damage to a meh 130 damage. And while some of you silencer wannabes may tell me that, oh yeah, you have 130 damage, meaning you can down an enemy missing a health bar in close range, which the others like the Krag or the Vetterli cannot, I would say, yeah, that's great, except the following. The Sparks silencer exists, it also does 130 damage, it fires long ammo, yes, it's single shot, but you can use fast fingers, it gets FMJ and poison and incendiary, which are very important custom ammos. It can take 2 custom ammos, and those status effect ones like incendiary and poison allow you to keep the enemy at low health, even at range, or especially in closer range. That is very valuable utility. They have better sights than the 1865. They fire roughly the same with better damage drop-off, especially if you use FMJ on the Spark silencer. That thing completely eliminates the purpose of the 1865, unless you say that the Sparks is too slow. But I will tell you one thing, the 1865 is not worth it, because the Sparks even has a faster muzzle velocity with the silencer than the 1865 will ever have. And that's kind of a problem, because muzzle velocity is important nowadays with silencers, since you need to potentially get that headshot to end a fight before it starts. Another issue with the silencer is the slow fire rate. Yet again, the base weapon focuses on high damage to knock the enemy out of a fight, meaning that if they don't die through a headshot or, for example, missing a bar, they will be so low health that they cannot partake in the gunfight, allowing your team to apply pressure. 130 damage at max up to 20 meters without FMJ and up to 30 meters with FMJ does nothing for your team, meaning that even beyond 20 meters, there's a very high chance you won't really one-tap that 1 bar missing hunter anymore, which really removes the point of using the silencer for its high damage. Just use a Vetterli veterally, or Krag. Both of those are better, or a Sparks if you want that 130 damage. The 1865 silencer is just simply not good enough. I think Crytek should consider reverting the silencer nerf as a global nerf and introduce them mainly to the Maynard silencer and to the Krag silencer. Those are the best ways to do this, because right now the 1865 fills a niche rivaled by the Sparks and fails in the medium ammo category due to the veterally or the Centennial, because both these guns have better things. The veterally has the fire rate, the Centennial has poison ammo and dum-dum ammo if you pick it up. I find that pretty sad because the 1865 can be very satisfying to use, even if it's not great. Let's talk about the perks I forgot to mention on the Aperture, by the way. On the Aperture, you also need steady aim and scopesmith to operate in the Aperture sight. Steady aim so that the scope/Aperture sight doesn't shake, and scopesmith so that you can repeat inside the sight. And you will also need Iron Eye, just like on the normal Carbine, meaning you need a lot more perks than on the normal Carbine to even use the Aperture for a utility that you don't really need. So I would say if you take the Aperture, just ignore the scope perks and save yourself the perk points, because it's such a niche. I'm doubtful you really need the repeating power to use the Aperture sight, because shit is gonna go wild as soon as the gunfight starts anyway. Let's talk about the silencer's custom ammos and the funny thing that Crytek did. So if you remember, the muzzle velocity, for example, on the 1865 with FMJ is 272 down to 340. Well, on the normal silencer Carbine, the base muzzle velocity is 289 already, which is already pretty bad. So you're looking at normal FMJ velocity, slightly better, but as your base. When you now use subsonic ammo on the silencer, you get 229 muzzle velocity, meaning that subsonic is 229, right? From 289. So you lose about 60 meters per second to be much quieter with silencers. The funny thing is FMJ, which was in the lead on the normal Carbine, has 218, meaning even lower muzzle velocity than the subsonic ammo load, which kind of is weird because on the normal Carbine they have higher velocity. I don't know if Crytek did this as a balancing measure to FMJ to encounter the use of subsonic. I do not know. Fact is, I would not use subsonic because even though you have 10 meters more velocity and more ammo to spare, which is good with a gun that tends to miss a lot, I would just rock FMJ, because the problem is if you don't, the silencer is pretty pointless unless you're good at head popping, but then I just suggest just use normal ammo instead and keep the velocity. To sum up, the 1865 Carbine is a piece of shit that you shouldn't use except if you mean base variant. The silencer variant is underwhelming. It is more a comfortable variant of the Sparks silencer, although I would say that if you want a medium ammo silencer, just use the Centennial silencer, the Maynard silencer for all I care, or the veterally silencer, because the Maynard has range, the veterally has fire rate, the Centennial has flexibility, the Sparks is just overall better. I'm sorry to give such a subjective guide on the weapon, but as I said in my drilling video, these guides are part of my experience that I'm trying to share here. My experience is anything above the base 1865 Carbine should not be used. The Carbine's utility basically gets lost as soon as you go with, for example, the silencer, which drops the muzzle velocity and damage, and the Aperture, which uses the Carbine's weakness, meaning range or the lack thereof. This guide hopefully helped some people, and I hope that you don't mind the very subjective take, but this weapon simply isn't one that I play for its competitiveness. Neither should you. Just use any of the other silenced weapons that I named, and perhaps consider using the Carbine more as an aggressive Sparks substitute that you can access pretty easily without going to single shot mode. Anyway, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer all my comments to the best of my abilities. Have a nice day, and I'll try to see what the next guide will be, either with another poll, or perhaps I just try to finish out the delayed crossbow guide. Feel free to write it in the comments. Have a nice day and happy hunting.
And you from the right of me, and you crossbow steel bolt.